My brother once threatened to kill me, my husband, and our children. He was sentenced to a year in prison but will be released soon. What should I do? Hi everyone, I'm so grateful to this community and the incredible support. I'm posting this to update you about our case. My brother called and threatened to kill me and my husband and kids about 2 months ago. He also has a history of getting guns, an axe, and other supplies with plans to commit other murders. He has hurt a dog sexually when he was younger, but did not hurt people yet. It has been horrible and difficult, and I'm not sure that I could have survived emotionally without my friends, colleagues, and this community. You gave me amazing advice. We are moving this upcoming weekend. My husband has been more supportive with the move, even though he still feels that he could take on my brother. I'm not interested in physically confronting my brother. I don't want to live in constant fear. Meds and the psych hospital didn't help him. I think the only thing that will help is a long-term inpatient unit, but our state doesn't have those resources. My brother was released from the hospital straight to jail. He currently awaits his court date in May. I met with the prosecutor today and gave my statement. They put his bail at $500,000, the highest the detective I've been working with has seen for a misdemeanor. His lawyer requested to lower it, but the judge refused to lower the bail amount. I was told the judge is aware of his previous serious plans and preparations to kill. The prosecutor plans to go for the most jail time possible for this, a year. I don't know if jail is right for him, but if he is released he will hurt someone. I spoke with my dad, and he was so mad at me for speaking with the police. He kept saying how my brother was asking for help and sharing his fantasies with me, not threatening me. He kept telling me to withdraw my statement. He said that I'm the one that put my brother in jail. It broke my heart. I told my dad that I only told the police the truth. I told him my brother is sick and will hurt someone. My dad said, "You don't have a crystal ball." True. But he's made his intentions clear again and again and again. His doctor said he has no empathy. His only thrill is thinking about hurting others. The prosecutor said that even if I withdraw my complaint, the state is still bringing these charges. The social worker and prosecutor said this to my parents, but my dad, mom, and sister keep insisting that I need to recant my statement. I'm terrified of every small noise in the house. We are leaving our friends and everyone we know and moving because of my brother's actions. I feel so heartbroken that my dad and family are blind to it. Everyone else, police and medical staff included, can see the clear writing on the wall. Relevant comments. Commenter, please keep your location private from your family. While they downplay the threat your brother poses, they're a risk. I can easily see them disclosing your new location to him just to prove he's not a danger. OP posted about her relationship struggles with her husband. Please help me stay in my marriage. I'm losing my patience. Married for 8 years. We have 3 kids, 7 to 2 years old. We both work full-time. Recently we had to move due to a safety issue. My husband did not want to leave and made me feel crazy for wanting to flee for our safety. Our already fragile marriage feels unstable with the added stress of moving. My husband is on the spectrum, and I thought that working from home would help him be less stressed and more kind. But he is unhappy, unkind, yelling at me and the kids, and generally questioning any decision or request I make. I made a compromise when I married him, knowing that I did not like his sense of humor or sex with him, but thinking that his intelligence and our common values would get us through. Now I feel stuck because I don't feel like our values are the same anymore. He wants material possessions. He hates meeting new people. He can't tolerate the noise and chaos our kids bring. I don't mind the chaos and noise, that's just kids. I love minimalism. To me, a stranger is just a friend I haven't met yet. I'm making new friends every day out here, and he's refusing to meet anyone new in our new city. I love being at work because I feel valued and appreciated. I love being with my kids or my friends for the same reason. But I dread every interaction with my husband. When he's gone for several days, I feel so happy because no one is criticizing me or yelling at the kids. He's on depression and ADHD meds and in counseling, but I don't think it has helped. Having known him for this long, I know he isn't changing. I keep trying to convince myself to stay. I want to stay for our kids. I don't want to ruin their lives. I'm just so very unhappy with constantly managing his feelings. I don't care if I will be alone my whole life. I don't care if I'll ever be loved. I just don't want to feel miserable. But I need to stay for our children. I feel so lost. I just want to not feel bad. Relevant comments. Commenter, why do you need to stay for the children? What good is it for them to be exposed to this? OP, I've dated people before that had these qualities but didn't match on values, or ended up doing something that hurt me. I made a decision to marry my husband knowing we matched well on most things. But since having kids he has become angry. Activities that we used to enjoy together he no longer enjoys. He used to make me feel special. I'm hoping that things change and he becomes happy and fun again. Update 1. We have 3 young kids and we both work full-time. We moved to a high cost of living location and my husband has encouraged me to get a second job because I have a profession that pays well. I told him that I enjoy working and I do, but I manage appointments for the kids and already feel stretched thin. I use lunch breaks to pick up meds for the kids or make phone calls for appointments for the family. My days off are used to take kids to appointments. I clean the house in the evenings. I let him know he'd have to take over the appointment coordinator role, start cooking more, and do more childcare if I'm working 50 or more hours a week. Well, I got off of work at 7 tonight and ran by the pharmacy to pick up our son's prescription. I was there over my lunch hour, but they messed it up so I came back after work. The line was long and I texted him updates. By 8 something I got the med and drove home. He was pissed because he took the kids to Costco for dinner and one accidentally dropped their food. I got home in time to help with bedtime while my husband yelled at the kids and told me he can't handle it. He said he could handle things if I actually made it home at a reasonable time. I'm kind of dumbstruck. Does he want me to work more or take care of the kids? I can't do both, and I told him this ahead of time. When we met he told me that he wanted kids and I agreed to have kids. I love our children. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but he told me that would stress him too much. I'm now feeling forced to work but still having to pick up the slack at home. Relevant comments. Commenter, sounds like your job is already tough getting off that late in the evening. Does he work and do you have daytime childcare? If he can't handle a single evening with the kids I'd be concerned about him having to do that most nights. What a whiner. He's going to have to toughen up and get some better parenting skills and patience because parenting doesn't necessarily get easier, just different, as the kids get older. OP, we do daycare. I'm a healthcare provider and my job gives me a lot of satisfaction, but we recently had to move for safety reasons. I'm the one that forced us to move because I was fearful for the kids' lives. The job I took promised full-time but ended up only having 30 hours a week, so I'm now picking up extra days at another clinic and interviewed to work at an urgent care on the side. Our son has severe ADHD and anxiety. I had to get all the doctor appointments scheduled, find school and daycare for the kids, get us into a protective program, take the kids to appointments, etc. My husband doesn't cook and he yells at the kids. He is in counseling but it sounds like the major thing the counselor said to him was that he has to take time for himself. I thought that was wild. I have done my best to keep us afloat. My husband kept his old job but it doesn't pay as well and he has to drive back to the old house to fix it up to sell. The drive is 8 hours each way, so I'm caring for the kids on my own weekly. I'm struggling. We don't have family here so not much support. Writing this out makes me feel like maybe I'm a dummy for doing this and not putting my foot down but I signed up for counseling and it was a disaster. The therapist told me to stop having expectations and to not complain and then proceeded to argue with my husband. Commenter, dude, there are a lot of bad therapists out there so please don't let that deter you. We had to go through a few before getting one that worked for us. I couldn't believe the internalized misogyny and blatant sexism of many. The worst one didn't take insurance so we were paying $200/WK for one session. She was obsessed with his family and how they were the image of perfection. She asked if she could meet his parents. She also told me that I should not have expectations. It should be clearly communicate and discuss expectations. She told me I was not allowed to bring up relationship issues. She would only ask me to listen to him and validate his feelings. It goes on and on. Do not let someone speak to you like this. Your feelings are valid, and find a new therapist if you are told otherwise. OP, wow, did we see the same therapist? It was almost verbatim what this therapist said to us. I'm the one that booked the appointment and filled out, not even joking, the 39 mandatory forms before the appointment. She berated me for filling out all the forms myself. Before any input or questions, she pointed to my unhappiness in our marriage from the filled out forms, and told me that I clearly overthink things and talk too much. Yeah, you had 39 mandatory forms. Of course it's a lot. Update 2, quick recap on her previous situation and thanks the community for their support. I want to let you know we are safe. We are in our new state. My husband is trying his best and being far more supportive. He still believes we should have stayed to fight, but he's accepted the fact I felt the threat was real. The kids are adjusting to life in our new state. We made some friends. Our location is not public. Despite my license to practice medicine being available online, it is far from the first result and our address is hidden. My employer is very respectful and kept my name off of the clinic list of providers. I've signed up for address protection through our state, This is thanks to many of you who advised me to move and hide our address. I appreciate all your kind advice. I am flying back to our old state today to testify against my brother tomorrow. He decided to go for a jury trial on advice from my parents. I'm an anxious mess and have tons of conflicting feelings. I helped raise my brother and a large part of my identity has been helping and protecting my siblings. A small part of me feels that testifying against him, and sharing everything I know, will destroy his life and be a betrayal. But I know he made his bed and must have consequences. It's the right thing to do, as shitty as it feels. The boy I helped raise is not there anymore. He is not the same person that sexually abused a dog, that has threatened to shoot up a hospital pediatric unit, stab my sisters, kill my parents with an axe, or kill me and my husband and kids with a sledgehammer. I dread seeing this man tomorrow. Every time his photo shows up on my phone I panic. Meeting people with the same name makes my heart beat faster. I can't stop feeling fear. I plan to tell the truth and let the jury decide if my brother is guilty. I worry that this will destroy what's left of my relationship with my family of origin. I have to do the right thing even if my parents and sisters think this is a betrayal of our family. My sister told me this will not change things between us, because she believes I will do the right thing for the family. But the truth is I plan on doing what's right for my family and the community. Again, I am grateful to you and will update you on how things go. Updated added via an edit. I just gave my testimony. My brother and mom were staring daggers into me, but I did my best to keep calm. They only allowed me to testify about the threatening phone call, not about any of my brother's past history. Not about guns, axes, or dogs. Relevant comments. Commenter. You're doing the right thing. Congratulations to you for actually doing something and preventing a tragedy. You're awesome. I don't know about American law, but is there a possibility to testify without the defendant in the room? Like, remove him from the room while you can testify. I've asked for this and I've seen it happen many times as a lawyer in another country. OP, I do not think there is a way to testify without my brother being in the room. I know that my family will also be there, and in a way, knowing how much they do not want me to testify is the worst part. My family is Soviet with a history of alcoholism, abusive behaviors, and secrecy. I'm trying to break that cycle for my own kids and to raise them to tell the truth, even if it is difficult or scary. It's heartbreaking that my brother grew up to be this person and threw all of us into this horrible situation. I wish that I didn't have to go against my parents' wishes, but I truly don't have a choice. Commenter. Your brother is desperate for help. And your parents and sister want to ignore those cries for help because IDK they don't want to look bad. If your brother is released and hurts or kills someone, what then? OP. My parents were mad at me for taking him to a crisis center initially when he admitted to being suicidal. They thought I should have brought him home to them to take care of it themselves. I think their approach would have allowed him to hurt someone. They think him buying guns and an axe, and tactical gear and scoping where to shoot people is just fantasies he had. My dad said it's no different than watching World War II movies, or reading historical fiction. My parents also don't believe that he sexually abused their dog, even though he admitted to it multiple times and the police and FBI told us about it and the social workers confirmed it. I didn't want to believe it either, but my brother admitted to it himself to my face and he looked very sheepish, and embarrassed that he did it. He didn't expect that his doctor would reveal it to the police, but they did. My parents care more about their son and how the family looks than the actual well-being of their daughters or grandkids. Update 3. Hi everyone. Thank you again for your kind support. Here is a hopefully, final update. I testified against my brother today, in the case of threatening to kill me, my husband and our kids. My brother was found guilty. I gave a victim statement and my husband gave one virtually. I was able to provide more background on his past threats and guns and other weapons. My testimony at trial was very limited to the phone call, so it felt good to be able to say all the reasons we have to take him seriously. My mom gave a tearful character statement saying he was so gentle and would never hurt anyone. The judge cut her off mid-testimony. It was honestly so validating. He will be released from jail in 2 weeks to serve out his sentence of 2 years of probation with regular check-ins, mandated therapy, and possibly having to wear a GPS tracker. The judge also extended the protective order for me and my husband and kids to 4 years. My mom is renting a hotel room for my brother once he's out of jail. They are trying to find a halfway house, but it will most likely be not very secure. At least probation and mandated therapy should help, I hope. I do not plan on having any future contact with my brother. I will see if we have contact with my parents. I plan on still talking with my sisters. I've urged them to not share their addresses with our brother, but they are adults. I'm not going to reveal our location to any of them because I don't trust that they won't reveal it. I feel that the ruling is fair and will get my brother treatment. I think that we are safe now. I did everything I could. Now I'm in the airport about to fly home and I'm having a drink to close this horrible chapter. Cheers. Now to the next story, story 2. My sister tried to seduce my fiancé before our wedding. Got caught on camera and was disowned by our parents. My manipulative, narcissistic sister attempted to seduce my fiancé just before our wedding in an effort to break us apart. Fortunately, her actions were caught on camera, leading to her being disowned by our parents. This story revolves around my older sister, Dove, 29F, who has never been able to tolerate my existence, as she apparently believes I'm living a life that I don't deserve. Dove, who is now divorced and jobless, is living with our parents. She had dropped out of college to be with her wealthy boyfriend, who eventually divorced her when her true nature became apparent. Growing up, my relationship with Dove was far from ideal. She was always the pretty and smart one, full of herself, and our parents consistently showered her with praise, which left me feeling inadequate. Everyone around us constantly admired her looks, while I was often ignored, and it hurt deeply. Dove used her popularity to mess with my mind, telling me that no one liked me, which made me incredibly insecure. My parents never supported me or acknowledged my feelings because Dove always lived up to their expectations. This led me to distance myself from them throughout my childhood and teenage years. Dove frequently had friends over when our parents were at work, and they would often mess with my room. On one occasion, they even ruined a school project of mine, nearly causing me to fail. When I threatened to tell Mom about it, Dove blackmailed me, saying she would share embarrassing pictures of me with my classmates. At just 14 years old, I was terrified. Dove never took responsibility for her actions, and it was pointless to tell my parents because they never paid attention to me. My mom never had my back, although my dad would occasionally call Dove out. For instance, one time she used my phone to send strange pictures to my friends after I'd complained to Dad about her. Another time, she spilled coffee on my prom dress and then played the victim, crying and claiming it was an accident. After that, I stopped confiding in him altogether. I never really understood why she harbored so much hatred towards me until later when I realized that she was a narcissist, and her behavior had nothing to do with me. She was a walking red flag in her relationships, cheating on every guy she dated. As much as I hate to admit it, she was also a gold digger. Something her ex, who remains a friend of mine, can fully attest to. Essentially, she was pretty awful as a teenager, and nothing changed as she grew older. If anything, her behavior only got worse. It was entirely my parents' fault because they never bothered to discipline her. After school, things finally started to look up for me. I worked incredibly hard to get into my dream college, and after a few years of struggle, I landed my dream job. It was there that I met the love of my life, Atlas, at an office conference. He was smart, kind, and handsome, and we hit it off instantly. Within a few months, we started dating. We traveled a lot, which only strengthened our bond. Atlas was very close to his family, so he introduced me to his siblings and parents just a few months into our relationship. But when it came to introducing him to my own parents, I took my sweet time. The main reason for this delay was my sister Dove and her malicious intentions. I always had this nagging feeling that she would find a way to ruin everything. She was the one who always got the best of everything as a child and teenager, and now that my life was going better than hers, I was certain she wouldn't be able to handle it, especially when it came to my relationship. However, I couldn't keep delaying the introduction any longer. Atlas was beginning to grow suspicious of my reluctance to introduce him to my family. So, after a year and a half of dating, I finally told Dad about him. Dad was thrilled that I had found a man who was worthy of me and invited us over for dinner. While I was excited, I was also equally stressed because I knew Dove could go to any lengths to sabotage my happiness. Although Atlas was aware of my family dynamics, I went over it with him in detail. He was relaxed about it and reassured me that he would handle whatever came his way. A few days after I spoke with Dad, I unexpectedly received a call from Dove. It was surprising since she had never reached out to me before. She started asking questions about Atlas and when I planned to visit home, but it was clear that her real interest was in getting more details about Atlas. I can only assume that Mom had told her I was seeing someone and that our relationship was getting serious. Dove was suddenly trying to get all chummy with me, but I could see right through her motives. Now, I'm grappling with whether I should take the risk of introducing Atlas to Dove, knowing full well that her intentions are far from good. I'm also considering an alternative, perhaps inviting my parents over to my place so they can meet Atlas without involving Dove. Update 1, thanks for all the great advice. Some of you asked for more details about Dove, so here you go. It's true that my parents, especially my dad, began to see Dove differently after her divorce, and she really brought it on herself. She had been academically gifted, But once she got to college, her entire focus shifted to her looks and beauty. That's when she met Jeremy, a super rich guy, and jumped into a relationship with him, completely abandoning her studies. During my final year of school, I was busy preparing for my college entrance exams, and Dove kept telling me I would never get into my dream college. But I did, and for the first time, I got validation from my parents. They were genuinely happy and proud of me. But Dove couldn't stand it. She was jealous that all the attention was on me and not on her. To sabotage my moment, she announced her engagement to Jeremy at the celebration party my parents had organized for me with close family and friends. It was obvious from Jeremy's expression that he had no idea she was going to do this, but she succeeded in making the day all about herself. Everyone immediately became curious about Jeremy because, according to Dove, he was extremely wealthy. Dove loved to show off the expensive gifts he bought her and would constantly tell me that I'd never find a rich husband because I was ugly and no one would want to date someone like me, always trying to make me feel bad. I eventually told her that I wasn't a gold digger like her and that I could pay my own bills, so she could have the rich husband if that's what she wanted. In truth, she was incredibly selfish and downright evil, the most selfish person I've ever known. A week later, Dove and Jeremy got engaged, but by then I was already off to college and didn't attend the engagement. During my time in college, I had no communication with her. It actually felt good to come home for the holidays, knowing that Dove was living with Jeremy. Even during the holidays, she would often be away on vacations to exotic locations with him. After a year of dating, they had a lavish wedding, with most of the expenses covered by Jeremy. Dad chipped in for the remaining costs as a courtesy since Dove wasn't earning anything. Their marriage didn't last long, though. After 3 years, they got divorced. The reason, as I later found out, was that Dove didn't want to have children, while Jeremy was eager to become a father. Although he assured me he never pressured her, he was frustrated that she never disclosed her feelings about it beforehand and had avoided the conversation for 3 years. He also mentioned her drinking and partying habits, flirting with guys at bars, and that she had married him purely for his money, with no emotional connection. I couldn't help but wonder how he remained blind to her true motives for so long. Jeremy even showed me videos of Dove out drinking with guys who were touching her inappropriately, and she did nothing to stop them. I was relieved he finally ended things with her, but my parents took Dove's side, blaming Jeremy for pressuring her about having kids, never acknowledging her faults. After the divorce, Dove moved back in with my parents since she wasn't working. She had dropped out of college to marry Jeremy, and now, after 5 years, she had no degree and no work experience. She pretended to be traumatized by the divorce, but in reality, she was happy to be free. Within a month of the divorce, she was back to her old habits, clubbing and hooking up. Her life seemed to revolve around weekly dates and ditching people, and her Instagram stories made it clear what she was really up to. 2 years into my career, I landed my dream job with a great salary, and my parents were thrilled. After receiving the job offer, I visited home, and Dad was so proud of me, I couldn't have been happier. We were having dinner when Dove returned home, looking partially drunk. Dad was upset at the sight of her and commented that Dove should have focused on her education like I did, instead of ruining her life over Jeremy. He pointed out how much I was earning and how Dove was still dependent on them for money. Mom tried to get Dad to stop making such comments, but hearing this, Dove lost her temper and slammed the door. That's when Dad finally realized just how spoiled Dove had become. He told Mom that it was time to knock some sense into her, insisting that Dove needed to start taking her life seriously and get back on her feet instead of continuing to leech off them. By this point, I was completely fed up with her. Later, Dove barged into my room and smugly told me that no matter how much money I made, I could never be like her. She even went as far as to body shame me, pointing out my belly fat and chubby cheeks. As a teenager, those kinds of comments used to break my heart, but now, I just didn't care. I laughed in her face and told her that I had no desire to be like her and that she clearly needed to work on fixing her attitude. That set her off, and she demanded that I leave the house. I calmly reminded her that this was our parents' house, and she had no authority to boss me around. The next day, as I was packing to leave, I noticed that 2 of my dresses had been badly torn, clearly cut with scissors. I went downstairs and showed my parents what Dove had done. Dad was furious and called Dove out, but Mom, as usual, tried to make excuses for her, claiming Dove was in shock and didn't know what she was doing. Dad wasn't having any of it. He warned Mom to stay out of it and then unleashed his anger on Dove, telling her that she needed to get her life together because he was done providing for her or tolerating her narcissism. This confrontation didn't sit well with Dove, and she ended up hating me even more because of it. From that point on, I was subjected to Dove's wrath, but her hatred didn't bother me. It only became unbearable when she started making advances on my boyfriend. After much consideration and talking it over with Atlas, I decided it was time to visit my parents with him. There was no point in hiding him from Dove any longer because, no matter how hard I tried, she would eventually find a way to get to him. My friends advised me that it was better to test his loyalty now than to risk losing him later. Dove would only succeed in her malicious intentions if Atlas allowed it. With a sense of dread, I showed up at my parents' house with Atlas. I tell you, she was practically throwing herself at him. As he was exchanging greetings with Mom and Dad, Dove almost forcefully pushed herself onto him for a hug. I have no idea what made her think Atlas would fall for her looks. She had completely transformed her appearance, dyeing her blonde hair black, getting all dressed up in a new outfit, with her nails and hair perfectly done, as if she was on a date with him. She tried to force her way into the conversation, but it was clear that everyone was ignoring her. At the dinner table, she quickly rushed to sit beside Atlas. When I asked her to move so I could sit there, she gave me an annoyed look but eventually complied. She kept asking Atlas about his interests, and if he mentioned liking something, she would immediately claim she liked it too, even if it was obvious she didn't. Then she'd go on about how she and Atlas were so compatible, winking at me as if to suggest I shouldn't take it seriously, though it was clear she was trying to cover up her intentions. Atlas was visibly uncomfortable, and he ignored her, continuing his conversation with Dad and Mom. Her desperate attempt was so blatantly obvious. After dinner, I decided to take a shower, leaving Atlas by himself. That's when Dove walked in, asking him to call her number because she claimed she couldn't find her phone. It was obvious that this was just a ploy to get his number. How twisted. Atlas also told me that while I was occupied with other things, Dove tried to play the victim, telling him her sob story about the divorce and how much mental distress it had caused her, dragging on about how it took her years to recover. To make matters worse, Mom even chimed in, blaming Jeremy and speaking ill of him. After a while, Atlas asked me if I wanted to go for a walk and give him a tour of the neighborhood. Before I could respond, my sister quickly stood up and said, "Sure." Atlas looked at her, surprised, and firmly stated that he wanted some alone time with me. Her face turned red with embarrassment and she quietly retreated to her room. It's only been a few days since that visit and I can already sense that Dove is planning more schemes to lure Atlas into her trap. I can't deny that it worries me, but at the same time, I trust my man and am curious to see how he handles her advances. Update 2. Hello everyone, I'm thrilled to share that I'm engaged. Atlas proposed to me last month during a trip and yes, he got down on one knee with a ring, and I couldn't stop gushing over it. But even after our visit to my parents, Dove didn't stop with her manipulative tactics. She started texting Atlas, asking how he was doing. Knowing that Atlas is a huge cat lover, Dove began flooding his inbox with cute cat videos, even though she never cared for cats before. After discovering that Atlas adored cats, she went so far as to get one herself and began recording videos of it to send to him. For the first few weeks, Atlas showed me Dove's desperate attempts to appear caring and concerned, sending messages that pretended to inquire about his work and well-being. After a while though, he stopped sharing her messages with me. I assumed she had finally given up on him and moved on, and we both shifted our focus back to more important things, especially with our busy work schedules. One day, as I was scrolling through social media, I noticed that Dove had added Atlas to her account. She was liking and commenting on nearly all of his posts, using silly heart icons. She even went back and commented on old pictures and videos from 7 to 10 years ago. I immediately felt uneasy about it, so out of the blue I checked his phone. I discovered that Dove was still texting him occasionally, but her messages were unread and seemed odd. She was clearly trying hard to get Atlas's attention. In his call logs, I saw missed calls from her, including one that came in around 3 a.m., which made me feel anxious. I confronted Atlas about why he hadn't told me that Dove was still texting him. He got a bit nervous and explained that he had been ignoring her and thought it was better if we didn't talk about her. I pressed him further about the calls, and he remained calm. Then he sat me down and explained that one day, Dove had called him, sounding really upset. He got scared, thinking something might be seriously wrong, but it turned out she just started talking about traumatic experiences related to Jeremy, saying she needed someone to talk to. Atlas told Dove that she should talk to her parents instead and that it wasn't appropriate to call so late. He also mentioned that she should have let me know first. That really struck a nerve with me, and I told him that keeping this from me wasn't okay and could lead to me losing trust in him. He reassured me that he would never fall for her tricks and that I had nothing to worry about. Even with his reassurance, I had read too many stories about husbands falling into similar traps, and I didn't want to be naive by blindly trusting him. I told him that the next time Dove called, he should hand the phone over to me so I could catch her in the act. Sure enough, one night, her call came through, and Atlas woke me up in the middle of the night. I answered the phone, and Dove immediately went silent when she heard my voice. She quickly claimed it was a mistake and hung up. The next day, I tried calling her multiple times to confront her, but she never picked up. So I texted her from Atlas's phone, letting her know it was me and that she needed to stop calling or texting him at odd hours. I also told her that if there was anything urgent she should contact me directly instead. After that, she finally stopped texting him, and I felt relieved that she was out of our lives. After Atlas proposed to me, I sent a picture of the ring to my dad. Dove must have shown it to Mom, and not long after, she started her stalking behavior again. She began texting Atlas and sending ridiculous videos. I was completely fed up. As soon as Atlas told me, I called her and unleashed all my pent-up anger, telling her to stop playing games and get a life. She mostly stayed silent while I let it all out, but I didn't realize at the time that she wasn't going to back down easily. As soon as I hung up, Mom called, furious, yelling at me for insulting my sister. Dove had told her that I was accusing her of trying to steal my fiancé. Mom claimed that my cruelty had caused Dove to have panic attacks and insisted that I be more considerate toward her, reminding me that Dove had been struggling with depression for years and was still recovering from her traumatic divorce. I found it laughable because Dove was never depressed about her divorce. I hung up the call and immediately informed Dad that if they continued to ignore Dove's behavior, I would have no choice but to cut them out of my life. I was done being a puppet in her game. I couldn't keep turning a blind eye to her antics. Update 3. I never imagined Dove would stoop so low. She had always made my life miserable, but I never thought she would actually try to seduce my fiancé before our wedding. The bullying, body shaming and constant ridicule were one thing, but realizing that she was willing to go as far as trying to ruin my wedding by seducing Atlas was a bitter pill to swallow. As we were planning our wedding, I wasn't in contact with Mom after our last confrontation. However, she eventually called and apologized for shouting at me, admitting that she had lost control out of fear for Dove, who was supposedly having panic attacks. One of my cousins later told me that Dove had been crying to everyone about how I was accusing her of trying to steal my fiancé and that I didn't deserve any of the good things in my life, especially Atlas. According to Dove, because she was the gorgeous one, she believed she should be the one getting the best of everything, not me. When I told Mom about this, she went quiet. She simply told me to forget everything and focus on my wedding and the happy life ahead. Fortunately, everything went as planned, and Dove managed to keep a low profile for a while. At the very least, she didn't interfere in our lives during that time. On the day of our wedding, we were at the venue, busy with final preparations, when I received a call from Atlas's best friend, asking me to come to Atlas's room with my parents. I jokingly teased him, saying that Atlas wasn't supposed to see the bride before the ceremony, but he insisted that this was something serious that needed to be dealt with before the wedding. My heart raced as I hurried to Atlas's room with my parents. When we arrived, Atlas was lying shirtless, drifting in and out of consciousness, while his groomsmen recounted Dove's devious actions. Apparently, while Atlas was getting ready, Dove had shown up with a drink. He initially refused it, but Dove persisted until he took a sip. Almost immediately, Atlas realized the drink was spiked. He excused himself and went to the washroom, where he called his friend, explained what had happened and asked him to come over. By the time his friend arrived, Atlas had partially passed out and was out of the washroom. Since his friend was sharing the room with Atlas, he had access and quickly turned on his camera as he entered. He overheard Atlas shouting at Dove to leave him alone while she was on top of him, undressing herself, and rubbing against him. This disgusting act was captured on camera. When Dove noticed Atlas's friend, she pretended they were making out, covered herself up and left the room, smirking at his friend and asking him not to tell anyone. Little did she know that she had already been caught on video. When we walked in, Atlas was still lying there, partially unconscious. The drink was so potent that even a few sips had left him severely dizzy with a pounding headache. The glass was still there, with solid particles settled at the bottom. It was an incredibly humiliating moment for my parents, who were in disbelief that Dove could do something so horrendous. My mom immediately called Dove and told her to come to Atlas's room. When she arrived, her lipstick was smudged, and she nonchalantly said, "I know you guys are mad at me, but it was mutual. Atlas loves me and has been making advances on me ever since we met. Today, he convinced me to have a one-time hookup before the wedding." My mom slapped her hard, telling her that we were aware of her lies and that everything had been recorded on camera. Dove was stunned by this revelation, and my parents wasted no time in kicking her out of the venue before she could cause any more trouble. Security was instructed not to allow her back inside. It was obvious that she had been trying to make it known that she had been with Atlas, hoping I would call off the wedding. My dad immediately called a doctor, who confirmed that Atlas had indeed been served a spiked drink, which had severely affected him. Atlas's parents and siblings were so upset that they wanted to confront Dove, but my parents had to apologize profusely to them to help calm the situation. The wedding had to be delayed until Atlas recovered, which took several rounds of vomiting to get through. Word of the incident spread quickly among the guests, who were buzzing with gossip for the next few days. Once Atlas had fully recovered, my dad walked me down the aisle. While I was happy to finally see Atlas as my husband, I couldn't shake the stress of everything that had transpired. During our vows, Atlas added an extra promise, vowing to protect our relationship from anyone who didn't want to see us together. After we returned from our honeymoon, my parents came to visit us and apologized to Atlas for all the trouble Dove had caused. My dad reassured us that Dove would be out of our lives for good. He had actually kicked her out of the house and told her to fend for herself. Despite this, I'm still struggling to move past the incident. My wedding was perilously close to being called off, and if Atlas's friend hadn't recorded what happened, I might never have believed that Atlas was innocent in all of this. Now to the next story, Story 3. Mother-in-law ruined my wedding. By spiking my drink, then tried to buy my forgiveness with $5K, now we're left to navigate the fallout. My mother-in-law secretly spiked my drink at my wedding, causing me to faint and ruin the reception. Now she's trying to buy my forgiveness with $5,000 because my husband has made his decision. Hi everyone, I'm Rachel, 27F, and I just got married a week ago to my wonderful husband Jaden, 32M. The wedding felt like something straight out of a telenovela. This whole journey began 2 years ago at a local coffee shop. I was a regular there, always needing my morning caffeine fix to start the day. One day, I noticed a tall guy with kind eyes standing in line behind me. He seemed nice, but to be honest, I wasn't really paying much attention. All I could think about was getting my hands on a latte. Later that same week, I bumped into him again, and this time, we ended up chatting while waiting for our coffees. We talked about everything. Our favorite books, weird childhood stories, and even our mutual love for that cozy little coffee shop. We laughed a lot, and for the first time that day I felt truly awake. Looking back, I realized that I was quick to judge at first. Perhaps because I was so absorbed in my routine or because Jaden wasn't the kind of guy I typically gravitated toward. But that day, something shifted in me. There was a genuine kindness in him, a warmth in his smile that I couldn't ignore. We exchanged numbers and that very night, Jaden texted me, asking if I wanted to grab dinner sometime. We ended up going to this tiny Italian place hidden away on a side street. The food was incredible, but the best part was our conversation. We talked for hours, and it felt effortless. We discovered we had a surprising amount in common, a love for old movies, a secret passion for karaoke, even though neither of us is very good, and a shared obsession with tacos. Over the next few weeks, we started seeing more and more of each other. We went on hikes, explored museums, and even tried, and failed, to take a pottery class together. The more time I spent with Jaden, the more I realized how special he was. He was funny, intelligent, supportive, and always knew how to make me smile. He pushed me to be a better person and made me feel like I could be completely myself around him. Then, on our second anniversary, Jaden surprised me with the most incredible proposal. We were on a weekend getaway to a charming cabin in the mountains. It was snowing softly outside, and we were cuddled up by the fireplace when Jaden got down on one knee and pulled out a ring. I don't even remember exactly what he said because all I could focus on was the love shining in his eyes. Of course, I said yes. As soon as we got back from our cabin trip, I dove into planning the wedding with so much excitement. But this is where things took an unexpected turn. After Jaden and I got engaged, I met his mom, Maria, 57, for the first time. She lived a bit out of town, so we hadn't had the chance to meet before. At first, Maria was incredibly sweet to me. She talked about how thrilled she was to finally have a daughter-in-law. Jaden was her only child, and she mentioned that she had always wanted more children, so having me join the family felt like a big deal to her, almost like gaining another child. She even hugged me warmly and said she couldn't wait to get to know me better. However, things began to change rather quickly. That weekend, Maria came to stay with us to help with some wedding planning and to spend more time together. Initially, I was thrilled, thinking we'd bond and grow closer. But as the weekend progressed, her attitude shifted in a way that made me uncomfortable. The first passive-aggressive remark came during breakfast on Saturday morning. I had made a batch of my favorite pancakes, and while Jaden was outside enjoying his coffee, Maria looked at me with a smile and said, "Oh, I guess you don't worry too much about carbs, huh?" I laughed it off at the moment, assuming it was just a casual comment, but it stung a bit. Later that day, as we were flipping through some wedding dress magazines, Maria pointed at a model and remarked, "This dress is stunning, but it's meant for someone with a very specific figure, Not everyone can pull it off. She glanced at me as she said it, and it felt like a subtle dig, suggesting she didn't think I could wear something like that. I just nodded and tried to brush it off, but the comment lingered, making me feel self-conscious. The remarks kept coming. When we were out shopping for some decorations, she casually mentioned, "You know, my friend's daughter lost 20 pounds for her wedding. She looked so stunning. Have you thought about doing something like that?" I was taken aback and didn't really know how to respond. I mumbled something about being content with my body as it is, but it left me feeling judged, as if she thought I should be trying to lose weight for the wedding. The next morning, while she was looking through my kitchen cupboards, she commented, "Oh, you have a lot of snacks here. I'd try to keep my house a bit more on the healthy side. You don't want to gain weight before the wedding, do you?" I couldn't believe she was still harping on about my weight, and it was beginning to really hurt my feelings. It felt like she was picking on me, even though she always had a smile on her face and spoke in a seemingly kind tone. What struck me as odd was that Maria never made those comments in front of Jaden. It was as if she had a switch she could flip on and off. When Jaden was around, she was all smiles and sweet words, but the moment he stepped out or was in another room, she'd start making those passive-aggressive remarks. I felt like I was living in two different worlds, one where I was accepted and loved, and another where I was constantly judged and criticized. Initially, I didn't think it was necessary to bring this issue up with Jaden. After all, it was his mom, and I didn't want to create any tension between us, especially since we had just gotten engaged and were in such a blissful place. I kept telling myself that it was just a minor inconvenience, something I could handle. Besides, I'm not exactly thin. I have curves, and I'm proud of my body. I've worked hard to feel confident in my own skin. Maria's remarks were more annoying than anything else. It felt like she was trying to undermine my confidence, but I was determined not to let her get to me. However, Maria started coming over more frequently. It felt like she was around every weekend, and it was beginning to drive me a little crazy. I worked from Monday to Friday and only had the weekends to focus on wedding planning. But every time I turned around, there was Maria, offering to help or just hanging around. It was tough to concentrate on wedding preparations with her constantly there, making little comments and acting like she knew better than I did. One weekend, she called to say she'd be coming over again. I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach because I really needed some time alone to plan without her input. So I told her I was going to be busy and wouldn't be at home. She asked what I was up to, and before I could stop myself, I blurted out that I was going to look at wedding dresses. I think I just wanted her to know that I had important things to do. To my surprise, she got really excited and said she'd love to come along. I didn't know how to say no without sounding rude, so I reluctantly agreed. The next thing I knew, she was at my door, beaming and eager to help me find the perfect dress. I tried to smile back, but inside, I was dreading how this shopping trip would unfold. We visited a few bridal shops, and from the moment we stepped inside, Maria was in full mom mode, suggesting dresses that didn't appeal to me and making comments about how certain styles wouldn't flatter my figure. It was utterly draining. I felt like I couldn't even breathe without her casting judgment. When I tried on a dress that I genuinely loved, she remarked, "It's nice, but don't you think it's a bit snug around the waist? Maybe something more flowy would suit you better." I was crushed because I adored that dress, but her words made me second-guess myself. By the end of the day, I hadn't found a dress, and I was feeling pretty low. Thankfully, Maria went back to her place, and I finally had a moment of peace. For the next few days, she kept texting me, asking when I would be looking for dresses again. I just kept saying that I didn't know when I'd have the time. I was determined not to tell her when I planned to go shopping, but my plan unraveled when Jaden mentioned to his mom that I'd be going dress shopping the next day. So she called me, asking what time she should come over. I found myself at a crossroads. Maria had already made so many remarks about my body that I dreaded the idea of her tagging along. I knew that if I took her with me to the bridal shop, she would ruin the day with more comments and judgments, so I decided to come up with an excuse. I told her that the bridal shop had a rule allowing only 2 people to accompany me, and my mom and maid of honor were already on their way. I realize now that it was a pretty lame excuse, but at that moment I couldn't think of anything else. Maria quickly pointed out how ridiculous my explanation was and said, "What kind of bridal shop only allows 2 people? That's just silly." I fumbled for a response and said, "I know it's weird, but that's what they told me." I was sweating bullets because I knew how flimsy my lie sounded. I hurriedly told her I had to go and ended the call before she could ask any more questions. As soon as I hung up, a huge wave of guilt washed over me. I hated lying, especially to Jaden's mom, but I just couldn't face another day of her making me feel bad about myself. I decided to focus on the positive and remind myself that this day was supposed to be fun and exciting. My mom and maid of honor picked me up and we headed to the bridal shop. I did my best to shake off the lingering guilt and just enjoy the moment, and in the end, I found a dress that I absolutely loved. After that, Maria didn't call, text, or even visit our house. She still kept in touch with Jaden, which was a bit of a relief since it avoided any awkwardness between them. I sent her a picture of me in the wedding dress, hoping to share some of my excitement with her. She responded with just a thumbs up emoji and nothing else. I wasn't sure how to interpret that, but I decided not to overthink it. With so much to do as the wedding approached, I didn't have time to dwell on her reaction. As the wedding day drew nearer, I became increasingly busy with all the preparations. Honestly, I didn't reach out to Maria again. There was so much to coordinate, finalizing the guest list, confirming the caterers, and ensuring that all the decorations were perfect. Finally, the big day arrived. It exceeded all my expectations. The ceremony was beautiful, and I couldn't stop smiling as I walked down the aisle toward Jaden. The look on his face when he saw me in my dress was priceless, making all the stress of planning worthwhile. We said our vows, exchanged rings, and just like that, we were married. The reception started off perfectly. The venue was gorgeous, the weather was ideal, the food was delicious, and everyone seemed to be having a great time. I loved our first dance. Jaden and I had taken a few dance lessons and we managed not to step on each other's toes. It felt like a fairy tale, and I was on cloud 9. Everything was going smoothly until I decided to get a drink. I walked over to the bar for something refreshing, and there was Maria, standing right there. She turned to me with a big smile and said, "You look like you're having a wonderful time. Let me get you a drink, just relax and enjoy yourself." I was a bit taken aback by her sudden enthusiasm but thought maybe she was trying to make up for all the awkwardness. She handed me a Shirley Temple, and I thanked her and took a sip. A few minutes later, I started feeling drowsy, but I assumed it was just because I was tired. Then, I fainted on the floor and lost consciousness. Everything went black, and the next thing I knew, Jaden was panicking and calling for an ambulance. I could hear the worry in his voice as he tried to keep me awake. People were gathering around, but it was all a blur. When the EMTs arrived, they quickly brought me back to consciousness and began asking questions about what I had eaten and drunk that day. I told them everything, including the meal I had at the reception and the Shirley Temple that Maria had given me. They expressed concern and asked if there was anything unusual or if I had taken any medication. That's when Maria, looking a bit guilty, stepped forward and admitted that the drink she gave me had alcohol in it. She explained that she didn't think it would be a big deal and thought it would help me relax. I was stunned. Why would she add alcohol to my drink without telling me? The situation became even more complicated when my maid of honor, Emily, spoke up. She informed the EMTs that I had taken some anxiety medication just minutes before walking down the aisle. I had been so anxious about everything going off without a hitch that I took a small dose to calm my nerves. It turned out that the combination of the medication and the alcohol in the drink was what caused me to collapse. There must have been some kind of chemical reaction that knocked me out. The EMTs explained that mixing alcohol with certain medications can be very dangerous and that I was fortunate the outcome wasn't more severe. After the EMTs left, Jaden turned to Maria and demanded that she leave. His voice was shaking with anger, and Maria looked completely shocked. She tried to explain, insisting she hadn't meant any harm and that it was all just a misunderstanding, but Jaden wasn't having any of it. He shouted at her to leave the reception immediately. I had never seen him so furious, and it broke my heart to witness his anger towards his mom on what was supposed to be a joyful day. With all the chaos, I wasn't feeling well, and the mood at the reception took a nosedive. Guests started to feel uncomfortable, and the joyous atmosphere we had worked so hard to create just vanished. People began leaving one by one, and before we knew it, the reception ended early. It was devastating to see everyone leave so soon, and I felt like the day I had been dreaming of for so long had been ruined. Jaden and I went back to our hotel room, and I was left trying to process everything that had happened. I felt numb, exhausted, and overwhelmed with sadness. This day was supposed to be one of the happiest of my life, but instead, it had turned into a nightmare because of a careless prank. I couldn't believe that Maria's actions had destroyed our special day. Maria kept texting and calling both me and Jaden, but neither of us responded. We needed some time to process everything and figure out our next steps. I could see that Jaden was deeply troubled by the situation. He loved his mom, but he was also incredibly hurt and angry over what she had done. It was a difficult situation, and I had no idea how to fix it. When we finally returned home, I tried to put the whole incident behind me and focus on starting our new life together, but it wasn't easy. Every time I thought about our wedding day, I felt a pang of sorrow. I kept replaying the events in my mind, wondering how things could have turned out differently if Maria hadn't pulled that prank. It felt like a dark cloud hanging over what should have been a beautiful memory. Thankfully, we soon left for our honeymoon, and it was such a relief to escape all the drama and stress. Jaden and I had an amazing time exploring new places and creating beautiful memories together. It was the perfect getaway, and for those 2 weeks, I felt like everything was back to normal. We laughed, relaxed, and enjoyed each other's company without a care in the world. When we returned home, reality hit us hard. The moment we pulled into the driveway, there was Maria, standing at the door. My heart sank, and a wave of anxiety washed over me. I had anticipated this confrontation, but I wasn't prepared for it to happen as soon as we got back. What made it worse was that she didn't offer an apology. Instead, she kept insisting that it wasn't her fault and that it was all just a prank. She tried to justify her actions, saying things like, "I didn't think it would hurt you. And I just wanted to lighten the mood." It was infuriating to watch her refuse to take responsibility for what she had done. I couldn't believe she was trying to downplay the whole incident as if it were just a harmless joke. Jaden couldn't hold back any longer. He snapped and told her that enough was enough. He said she had crossed a line and needed to own up to her actions. He made it clear that the only way he would talk to her again was if she apologized to me. He told her that she had hurt me deeply, and it was not acceptable. Maria tried to interrupt, but Jaden didn't let her. He went on to say that from now on, they would only be seeing each other during holidays. No more random weekend visits, no unnecessary calls. He told her it would be like they were distant relatives who only met on special occasions. Maria was shocked and started to cry, but Jaden remained firm. I could see how painful it was for him to have to set such boundaries with his own mother, but he was determined to support me and ensure I felt safe and respected. Yesterday, while I was at work, I got a call from Maria. It caught me off guard because we hadn't spoken in a while, and I wasn't expecting her to reach out, especially during work hours. She told me she was outside my office and wanted to meet. I was surprised and didn't want her coming inside and causing any unnecessary drama, so I agreed to meet her outside to avoid a scene. We sat down at a small cafe across the street, and I could tell she was really upset. As soon as we began talking, she broke down in tears. It was awkward because people around us started to stare. She told me she couldn't believe what Jaden was doing. He wasn't answering her calls or responding to her messages. She was distraught and begged me to talk to him on her behalf, saying she just wanted things to go back to the way they were before. I want to point out that, up until this moment, Maria still hadn't apologized to me for what happened at the wedding. It was as if she was in complete denial about the impact of her actions. I told her that instead of coming to my office and causing a scene, she should be thinking about how her actions had affected both me and Jaden. I explained that she had ruined my wedding day, and it wasn't fair to expect me to just brush that aside and talk to Jaden for her. She tried to defend herself, saying she didn't mean any harm and was sorry I reacted the way I did. It was as though she couldn't see past her own perspective and understand that her actions had real consequences. She kept insisting that if she had known what would happen, she never would have done it. As she continued to cry, I noticed people in the cafe beginning to glance over with concern. The whole situation made me incredibly uncomfortable, and I just wanted to leave. I told her that I would see what I could do, but I didn't make any promises. Up until now, I still haven't talked to Jaden about it because I'm not sure if I'm ready to forgive Maria. After all, she only apologized after I prompted her to do so. My mom thinks I should just let it go and forgive my mother-in-law, but I'm not entirely sure. What do you all think? I'd really appreciate your advice. Update 1. Hi everyone, thank you so much for your comments and suggestions. It really means a lot to have a space where I can share my story and receive support. Maria's constant texts and calls were starting to wear me down. So I decided it was time to have another conversation with Jaden and figure out how we could move forward. I told Jaden that Maria had come to my office and apologized to me. It wasn't entirely true. Her apology wasn't exactly what I needed, but I felt like it was time to start mending things, even if just a little. I told him that I had forgiven her, which was mostly true, because I wanted to move past this mess and focus on our future. Jaden looked at me with concern and asked if I was really sure. I assured him that I was ready to move on, but we needed to set some boundaries with his mom to avoid any more drama. He seemed relieved that I was willing to forgive her, but he also recognized that this wasn't just about me, it was about us as a couple and our need for peace and stability. After our talk, Jaden texted Maria, letting her know that he was glad she had apologized to me and that we were ready to try and move forward. However, he also made it clear that the boundaries we set before still stood: no more dropping by unannounced, no more constant calls, and no more overstepping her limits. He told her that we needed some space to focus on our own lives. Maria responded almost right away, saying that she was sorry for everything and that she just wanted to be a part of our lives. She promised to respect our boundaries and give us the space we needed. I still have mixed feelings about the whole situation. On one hand, I'm glad that Maria seems to be taking our boundaries seriously, but on the other, I still feel a bit uneasy because I know that one slip-up could bring all the drama back. I'm trying to focus on the positive and remind myself that we are making progress, even if it's slow. Some of you have asked about my anxiety, and I want to thank you for your concern. I don't feel comfortable going into too much detail, but I do want to clarify that my anxiety wasn't about Jaden or our relationship. I knew he was the one for me from the moment things got serious between us. The anxiety was more related to the wedding day itself and the immense pressure that comes with planning such a big event. We had over 200 guests attending, and I was determined for everything to be perfect. I worried endlessly about all the little things that could go wrong, like the food not turning out well, the music not being enjoyable, or the decorations not living up to my expectations. The thought of any detail going awry made me incredibly anxious. I wanted our guests to have an amazing time and to remember our wedding as a beautiful and joyous celebration. Update 2. Hi everyone, something unexpected happened, and I'm still trying to figure out how to feel about it. Things were going smoothly until last weekend when Jaden received a call from Maria inviting both of us to dinner at her place. She mentioned that it was important for us to have this dinner to start getting things back to normal after everything that had happened. Jaden told me about the invitation and asked what I thought. I told him it would be okay and that we should go. Maybe this was her way of trying to make amends. When we got to Maria's house, she greeted us with a warm smile. But after dinner, Maria did something that completely took me by surprise. She got up, left the room, and came back with a check for $5,000. She handed it to me, saying she was truly sorry for ruining our wedding day and that, while she couldn't change the past, she wanted to give me this money as a way to make up for it. I was completely taken aback and immediately felt uncomfortable. It was such an unexpected gesture and I didn't know how to respond. I refused the money right away, telling her that I didn't need it and that we should just let bygones be bygones. Jaden agreed and told her that she didn't have to give us any money, but Maria was persistent. She wouldn't take the check back and ended up slipping it into my coat pocket. I was so shocked and didn't know how to handle it. She seemed almost desperate for us to accept it, which only made the situation more awkward. After that, we left her house and headed back home. On the way, Jaden and I talked about what had happened and we were both confused. Why would Maria give us such a large amount of money? It felt strange, and I couldn't help but wonder what her true intentions were. Was she genuinely sorry, or was this her way of trying to buy our forgiveness? I'm not sure and it's left me feeling really unsettled. Jaden and I discussed it again, and we're still not certain about what to do. He's just as confused as I am, and we both want to approach this situation in a way that's fair and respectful. We don't want to hurt Maria's feelings or dismiss her attempts to make amends, but at the same time, we don't want to feel like we're being bought off. If anyone has any advice or has gone through something similar, I'd really appreciate hearing your thoughts. Update 3. It's been 2 weeks since my last update and honestly, not much has changed. We still have the check that Maria gave us, but we haven't cashed it. It's just sitting in our drawer, almost like a reminder of everything that's happened. I'm not really sure what we'll end up doing with it, but for now, it's just there. As for our relationship with Maria, things are pretty much the same. We're all in this holding pattern where we're trying to be civil and respectful without revisiting the past too much. She's been respecting our boundaries, which has been a huge relief. She doesn't show up unannounced anymore, and the constant barrage of texts and calls has stopped. It feels like she's genuinely trying to do better, and that gives me some hope for the future. Jaden and Maria still talk on the phone regularly, and their conversations seem to be positive. I'm relieved that their relationship hasn't suffered too much from everything that happened. I also talk to Maria sometimes. Our conversations are polite and a bit formal, but both of us are making an effort to keep things friendly. I think this will be my last update for a while. I don't expect much to change anytime soon, and I'm hopeful that things will continue to improve little by little. I want to focus on the positive and keep moving forward, and I believe that's the best approach for now. If anything major happens, I might pop back in with an update, but for now, I'm going to take a step back and concentrate on living my life. Thank you again for all your support, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.